Good morning and thanks for joining us on Friday morning's edition of Breakfast Central. As always, for the next 2 hours, we have some of the major conversations happening here in Nigeria, and we always encourage you to join us, be a part of the conversation by simply following and sharing your thoughts at News Central TV on all social media platforms. If you're watching us on YouTube as well, do leave a comment. Thank you once again for joining us. The major conversations happening across Nigeria this morning are, centered around security and electricity and, of course, the performance of the current administration. But also, just yesterday, news broke about the arrest of Simon Ekpa in Finland. He's been accused of supporting or, in some way or the other terrorist activities in Nigeria. We're going to be x-raying that, but mostly also trying to understand what the little details are surrounding his case. And, if there is a case, and, of course, many people have been also reacting to the possibilities of him being extradited to Nigeria to maybe be charged, by the Nigerian government officially. But it's also not surprising. I think it's there's been many views in the last couple of months or even years asking that the Finnish government take action against, this individual who, they accuse, here in Nigeria, of course, accused of supporting and orchestrating the violence that has happened in the southeast in the last couple of years. We've seen elements who claim to be members of the either IPOB or ESN, in their efforts to enforce a sit-at-home order, allegedly murder, attack, and destroy lives and property in the southeast. And so there have been numerous calls, for him to be arrested and hopefully or maybe extradited to Nigeria. So we'll see how that goes. If you remember, many years ago, when the IPOB was prescribed by the Nigerian government, that also elicited a lot of reactions from Nigerians, those in support and those totally against it. Many people have criticized Simon Ekpa's mode of, addressing these issues, and of course his method of operation, supporting violence, maybe even orchestrating violence, or being, of course, the voice behind the violence that has happened in the southeast since that time. Nnamdi Kanu's case, of course, is still ongoing with the Nigerian government. We continue to bring updates. I believe he has a court appearance again sometime soon. But while the leader of the IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, has been in court or has been held by the Nigerian government after being arrested in Kenya, Simon Ekpa, of course, thought it wise to take upon that role and that responsibility upon himself to lead the group. But, well, we'll see how things go in the next couple of days or even weeks. We're going to be having an extended conversation about that this morning on the show. So please, be sure to join us and let's see how much we can x-ray the little details surrounding his arrest. Let's quickly share with you this morning what our top stories are and then also bring you breakfast headlines as we get into Breakfast Central this morning. This morning, rising concerns over judicial autonomy across Nigeria. And Finnish police arrest Simon Ekpa over terrorism charges. Raise investment to 500 billion naira or exit, reps tell discos. And also NEC meets OK's power and policing reforms. We're also going to be sharing with you the newspaper front pages this morning, the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Friday morning. Stay with us. We'll begin the news in West Africa's Nigeria, where the House of Representatives has rejected a bill proposing a single 6-year tenure for the president, state governors, and area council chairpersons, supported and sponsored by Ikenga Ubochinye, representing Idiato North, Idiato South Federal Constituency, alongside 33 others. The bill also sought to mandate rational or rotational leadership. This would alternate between the presidency and in the North and the South regions, and also rotate governorship among the 3 senatorial districts in each state. The legislation aimed to amend Section 76, 116, 132, and 136 of the 1999 Constitution to promote inclusive governance and reduce the costs associated with 4-year electoral cycles. However, during Thursday's plenary, presided over by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, the proposal was rejected following a voice vote by lawmakers.
To move that that a bill for an act to alter the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended to provide for a single term of 6 years for the office of President and state governors, provide for the rotation of offices of President and state governors and chairmen of local government council among the inherent regions and zones, and to provide that all elections be held on a single day, to be read for a second time. I so move.
Those against you say nay. The nays have it.
Now, staying with the Parliament, the Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's loan request of $2.2 billion to partially finance the 9.7 trillion naira budget deficit for the 2024 fiscal year. The Senate, presided over by Deputy Senate President Barrow Jibrin, approved the loan after the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debts, chaired by Senator Wamako Magatakada of the APC Sokoto North, presented the report of the committee. The request, which was submitted by the President on Tuesday, is part of a fresh external borrowing plan to partially finance the 9.7 trillion naira budget deficit for the 2024 fiscal year. He further directed the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debts to expedite its review of the request and present a report within 24 hours. Although the deadline elapsed on Wednesday, the committee submitted its report findings during Thursday's plenary, leading to the loan's approval. Now, let's also tell you that the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has presented a record-breaking 2025 budget proposal of 3,535,198,401 naira to the Lagos State House of Assembly, themed the Budget of Sustainability. The proposed budget, which significantly surpasses the 2.3 trillion naira approved for the year 2024, is designed to ensure continuity, resilience, and prosperity for Lagosians. Governor Sanwo-Olu outlined 5 key focus areas, including infrastructure, sustainability, economic diversification, and institutional reforms. Speaking during the presentation, the governor emphasized that the budget is a practical framework aimed at positively impacting the lives of residents rather than a mere statement of intent. He also urged Lagosians to support the government's vision by actively contributing to the development of the state. And now, the self-acclaimed leader of the proscribed Indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Simon Ekpa, has been arrested by law enforcement in Finland. It was reported that Ekpa was subsequently sent to prison in the district court of his region for spreading terrorist propaganda on social media. Ekpa was said to have committed the crime in 2021 in the Lahti municipality. The Finnish National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, also arrested 4 other men over alleged terrorist offenses. A citizen of Finland and Nigeria, Ekpa has described himself as the leader of the separatist group since Nnamdi Kanu's incarceration. Finnish police say Ekpa's activities and social media rhetoric may have fanned the flames of violence in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And the news continues in other parts of West Africa, where Mali's junta has appointed General Abdoulaye Maiga as the country's new prime minister, just a day after the dismissal of civilian leader Choguel Kokala Maiga. The announcement comes in the wake of Kokala Maiga's public criticism of the junta's lack of clarity regarding the transition to civilian rule. The former prime minister had condemned the indefinite postponement of elections initially promised for March 2024. General Abdoulaye Maiga, who previously served as the government's spokesperson, now assumes the role of prime minister, further solidifying the military's grip on power. The decision is seen as a move by the junta to strengthen its authority amidst growing international pressure and internal uncertainty over Mali's political future.
Le président de la transition, chef de l'État, vu la Constitution, vu la charte de la transition, vu la loi 2022-001 du 25 février 2022 portant révision de la charte de la transition, décrète. Article 1er. Le général de division Abdoulaye Maiga est nommé Premier ministre. Article 2. Le présent décret sera enregistré et publié au journal officiel.
And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Now let's head back to Breakfast Central and continue with our top stories. I am Osaogi Ogbonwa.
The National Economic Council has mandated 3 states of Adamawa, Kebbi, Kwara, and the Federal Capital Territory to present its submission on state policing within the next 1 week. The council, which met in Abuja while receiving several memos on improving the nation's power crisis, tackling food security, amongst others, agreed to present a consolidated position on state policing at its next meeting. Amadine Uyi brings more in this report.
The meeting was chaired by the Vice President Kashim Shettima. In attendance were state governors and stakeholders responsible for tackling Nigeria's economic decline. The forum deliberated on state police and received memos on efforts aimed at tackling food insecurity.
The State Police Council was updated with the submission of the establishment of state police, and it was reported that 33 states have submitted their positions, while 3 states are yet to do so. And these 3 states are Adamawa, Kebbi, and incidentally Kwara, which is the chairman of our forum. And the FCT are yet to submit their positions.
Council also received presentation from the National Coordinator of the Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones, SAPZ. As you are aware, this is a special agro development program by the federal government working with African Development Bank. And the pilot states, Kano, Imo, Kwara State, Kaduna State, Ogun State, Oyo State, Cross River State, and FCT under Phase 1.
Also, efforts aimed at improving Nigeria's power situation was deliberated, including efforts aimed at increasing current national revenue by relevant agencies in the country.
The Council resolved that Nigeria needs a reformed and diversified electricity system, apart from the one from National Grid. It further observed that by empowering states, accessibility and affordability of electricity can be enabled, ensuring that all regions can effectively meet their specific energy needs.
The implications of the underfunding were discussed, and the Council resolved that they appreciated the challenge being faced by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, and directed the Secretariat to study the submission as regards to the quantum presented by the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation and Fiscal Commission, as well as the legality of the request.
The Council also highlighted funds available in Nigeria's excess crude account, stabilization account, and natural resources account. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Thank you very much, Amadine Uyi, for bringing us that report. Very key areas that the NEC is looking at: state policing and resolving Nigeria's power crisis. Nigerians would say that we haven't seen a year as terribly inconsistent with our power supply as 2024 has been. It's been constant power grid tripping off, this year than I can ever remember, really. And, with state policing as well, we've been looking at the importance of state policing and our fight against insecurity. Part of the tactics that have been advocated for by experts have been to consider the importance of state policing and why exactly state policing is a key element in the fight against insecurity. Because, for example, in a number of these states, when you look at the traumas and the battles that they have to fight, sometimes they are fights that are wrought by internal agents, and it's only better or best discovered by the state police. But we'll come back to talk more about this. Let's go on a very quick break. And when we come back, more conversations. Stay with us. Concerns about the independence of the judiciary in Nigeria have intensified as Nigerians are the mingling with the executive and members of the public has become increasingly common among some judges who now attend dinners, book launches, groundbreaking ceremonies, and other events that have been hosted by potential litigants. Critics argue that these actions breach the judiciary's code of conduct, which prohibits judges from forming special relationships with potential litigants.
Others have also highlighted systemic concerns such as the executive arm funding judicial projects like housing and vehicles for judges, which they say contravenes constitutional guarantees of financial autonomy for the judiciary. Now, this reliance, they argue, risks judicial impartiality and undermines the separation of powers. Joining us to discuss this is a human rights lawyer and managing partner of Liberty Semper Fidelis, Dr. Abdul Mahmood, who joins us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Mahmood.
Hello, sir.
Right?
Oh, yes, we can hear you. Good morning, Dr. Mahmood, if you can hear us.
Thank you.
Okay, while we try to fix the connection with Dr. Mahmood this morning, the conversation is mostly centered around fixing the obvious flaws that we can see in the integrity of Nigeria's judicial system, and of course the independence that it should have, the issues that have been pointed out, with the frolicking of judges and the likes with the executive, every now and then where we hear about cars and SUVs being bought by governors and handed to judges, this basic relationship really that should not exist because of how it it affects or could affect the impartiality of the justice system.
The funny thing is that the conversation about independence of the judiciary is not a new conversation. We are discussing independence of judiciary as far back as when I was in law school over a decade ago, right? And it's wild or very interesting to see that many years later we're still having these conversations. However, at the time, the conversation was more from the perspective of how, yes, separation of powers is important for checks and balances, but they hammered particularly on, yes, there is separation of powers, but the judiciary on its own has to be a standalone, has to be totally independent of the other two arms of government, because it is the judiciary that is the overseer of these two arms of government to ensure that, when there's anyone that's overstepping their boundaries, they will come to the judiciary as the last resort to sort this out. So it's really been an ongoing conversation. Of recent times, majority of the scenarios that have elicited this conversation would be the Chief Justice of the Federation attending the groundbreaking ceremony by the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, and then seeing a number of, we talked about it when we were doing Which Way Nigeria some days ago, when we had the Lagos State Governor host a special celebration dinner for the CGN. A number of these have made people raise eyebrows and want to look at what exactly that might mean for the independence of the judiciary. We have lawyer and managing partner at Liberty Semper Fidelis, LP, Dr. Abdul Mahmood. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I apologize for the technical challenges I've been having from my end. One of those challenges we face in this part of the world, particularly Nigeria.
Okay, we hope that, that we can be able to get through the conversation with it. But let's dive right into it. A number of the scenarios that have popped up in the past few weeks or months have made Nigerians raise eyebrows. For example, would be Justice Kekereekun attending a Lagos State dinner hosted by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, as well as the groundbreaking ceremony that was hosted by the Minister of the FCT. Now, are these just mere eyebrows that people are raising, or is there really a cause for concern in these scenarios?
For me, this is my personal view, and also take into account some aspect of my professional life as a practicing lawyer, and I need to say it straight out. the attendance of the Chief Justice of Nigeria at a party organized by the governor of Lagos State was ill-advised. That's one. Two, the groundbreaking event in Abuja, which involved again, the CJN and the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, ought not to have happened in the way that it was organized. We are talking about the judicial arm of government. Let's get it straight. There are three arms of government: legislative, executive, and the judicial arm. The judicial arm is the unelected arm of the government, but it represents that arm that interprets national laws, rules in our statute books. When judicial officers are seen to be romancing with members of the executive branch in public, it raises fundamental questions about perception of bias, perception of romance, perception of the inadequacy of the judicial branch. And I thought that for occupants of judicial offices or judicial officials, they should have been circumspect in accepting to attend programs of the executive branch. I think we have in aid judicial history here. When in 1976 or thereabout, the former governor of Lagos State tried to organize a state banquet, and he invited the Chief Judge of Lagos State at the time, J.I.C. Taylor. J.I.C. Taylor just fired a letter to the military administrator and told him, "Look, I'm busy with my judicial duties. I don't have time to attend programs put together by the executive branch." What our current crop of judicial officers are doing does not speak well of their exalted positions, does not speak to what is expected of them vis-a-vis, ethical responsibilities that they owe to the profession. But you see, every bad thing has a source. Like I told a group of journalists last week, we have become a society of one bear. We've become a society of let's celebrate, waiting we will chop, how we will chop. You admit a lawyer to the Nigerian bar, they shut down at Abuja. Every point, every bar you find in Nigeria, people are celebrating. New entrants to the profession. New entrants to the profession are celebrating. When you admit lawyers to the inner bar and become senior advocate of Nigeria, they shut down Abuja. When you pass JAMB and you are given admission, that culture of celebration is what has eaten deep into all facets of our national life, including the judiciary. You appoint a lawyer, a judge, you invite his entire community, and they throw parties, shut down streets of our country and all that. The appointment, is an invitation to exalted, ethical, more opportune in respect of duties. And I do not think as Nigerians we recognize the importance of all of these. And this is what you find happening today in the judicial branch. When we were growing up, before I became a lawyer, even when I became a lawyer, hardly would you see a judge in the public space. Judges were seen, they were heard, but not seen. Today, unfortunately, you find judicial officers everywhere. Some of them even boast in a public place, like the legislator who was caught on camera a few years ago, telling the Nigerian public, "You know who I am. I'm Judge of the Federal Republic of Nigeria," and all that. It's unfortunate.
You've really touched on some key points, and I'd like to, follow up with something that you've said, and making reference to how far And truly, the legal profession has oftentimes been referred to as not just a noble profession, but one that isn't really a loud profession. It's why the code of conduct would not allow certain things like advertising and the likes. But you talked about the SAN, the SANs who, when they get appointed, or the judges, they throw a party and they shut down Abuja. The procedure and the process for appointing SAN has also been another conversation that has come up. If we're looking at the independence of the judiciary, I think there might need to be a cleanup that starts from the inside. And one of the areas that have been highly criticized is the mode by which these people are appointed, and how there's, sometimes in some cases there has to be some sort of lobbying. And there have been lawyers who have called for the cancellation of the process for, attaining an SAN or sanship, because they feel that it's fraught with so many irregularities. I'd like to find out your thoughts on that.
Well, unfortunately, I think I'm conflicted here. I'm one of the many Nigerian lawyers, senior lawyers, who are applying for the executive position senior advocate of Nigeria. But I also have to be honest with ourselves. Everything that every good that Nigerian touches, turn into rot. And the process for appointment, though glamorized in the public space, does not meet the expectations of many lawyers. It's true. The culture of lobbying has eaten deep into the process of appointment, but largely it is still based on merit. You, as a litigious lawyer, you still have to present. You still have to meet the condition of having appeared before judges in the High Court, won cases or lost cases, as the case may be, in the Court of Appeal, and must have had a case in the Supreme Court with root in the trial court, which invariably means that one of the cases you are presenting as evidence of your meritorious litigious advocacy, in the profession, should have begun from the High Court, gone through the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. Every year, the Privileges Committee comes out with conditions for appointment. But like I said, we are Nigerians, and the appointment is a Nigerian appointment. Some of the melees that afflicts our society also afflicts the appointment process. But that does not mean that many lawyers you find who are senior advocates of Nigeria today did not earn it meritoriously. They did. But I have some criticism of the appointment itself. If you look at elsewhere, particularly United Kingdom, where we borrow this culture from, the appointment is largely driven by excellence. So what have you done to shape, to change the course of, jurisprudence, of your country? I'm critical of our practice, and I'm also critical of myself, because I'm a trial lawyer. Some of the cases we present as evidence, to become senior advocate of Nigeria, are a rehash of principles, of ratios, of decisions, of the Supreme Courts, of courts of our country. No new principles, no new ratios are being set. And you just ask yourself, what is the basis of this excellence? How does the Privileges Committee define excellence? There's a case about Marukolu and Ikedili, which touches on, every lawyer knows it, on jurisdiction. In 1961, 1962, Federal Supreme Court decision. As brilliant as that decision is, no principle, no new ratio has been able to set the boundaries or even expand the boundaries of the decision. So for me, excellence is not driven by the number of cases you attend to at the apex court of our country. Excellence will be driven by how you shape jurisprudence.
All right. All right, Dr. Mahmood, in the interest of time, let's move on to other, major conversations. I want your thoughts on the, I've heard people react, even other lawyers react to the case against former CJN Walter Onnoghen. It has been dropped, but, for me, the key aspect of it was the damage that was done to the judiciary when that action was taken against him, of course, born from the CCT. So I want your thoughts on what significance it has or it has had on Nigeria's judiciary, and what your general thoughts are on that case being dropped.
Well, I welcome the decision of the Court of Appeal, and I salute the former CJN Onnoghen for his tenacity of purpose, his courage of conviction. For lesser men who were shoved out of judicial position, they would have just gone into oblivion and sulk till the day of their deaths. But he didn't do that. He picked up the mantle, the gauntlet, as the case was, and fought back the Nigerian state that was intent, in disgracing him, and they did disgrace him out of office. For me, two things combined, in the destruction of the Nigerian judiciary. I'm sure you both remember a few years ago, in the middle of the night, dark men from the state security service stormed the homes of judges in Abuja, break through their doors, all in search of dollars and foreign currencies, without respect for the exalted positions that these men and women held. Not long after, we saw the shenanigans that happened with Delandi Umar, who sat over the CJN, or Chief Justice of Nigeria, in what was a trumped-up charge against the judicial officer. I'm glad that we've come to the truth. I'm glad that there is an erasure of the stain that was planted on the white banner of the CJN, of the former CJN. But how do we recover from it is a question that we must have to answer. In an attempt to answer it, we must pose the fact that two things are fundamental to the existence of the judicial arm in any constitutional democracy: respect for the Constitution and the protection of independence of the judicial arm. Both will have to happen within the judiciary and outside the judiciary. Some of us that are outside the judiciary, who are practicing lawyers, must continue to promote and defend the Constitution, promote and defend the Nigerian courts and judges, and judges themselves from within. We must begin to assert their independence, must begin to show some sense of respectability. It is when you respect yourself that the world will respect you.
Yeah, but quickly, before we move on to other things, quickly, how much culpability would you give to judges for the damage that has been done so far to the judiciary, and of course, the Buhari administration as well? Is that a thing that the Nigerian judiciary would ever be able to recover from with the current crop of judges?
Well, judges are not plucked from planet Mars. They are also Nigerians. They have the Nigerian blood in them. They have relatives, relations, friends, associates, old boys networks that they operate within. Like I said earlier, some of the malice afflicting Nigeria also afflict the judicial branch, and judges are not insulated. But look. The corruption index, which I read, I think was issued last week, pointed to the judicial arm as one of the most corrupt institutions in our country. It is not monkeys that people in the judicial branch. It is humans like us, it's judges, which invariably point to the fact that when you have judicial officials, you have judges who are collecting and demanding, bribes. Where they are found, they should be, they should be punished. They should be sent out of the judicial branch, like the National Judicial Council did a few days ago. But my problem with the outcome of the council's meeting is that it made no pronouncement on the prosecution of judges who altered their ages. Alteration is forgery, and it is punishable by the statute books of our country. When we begin to fish out the bad eggs within the judicial branch, we'll now begin the onerous task of cleansing the branch from cleansing the branch from within. But we have a fundamental problem in our country. The way we constitute power, the way we deploy power, the way we refuse to make power, consequential, even in the affairs of men and of citizens, is at the heart of some of this crisis that we are facing in our country.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, we're really trying to work with the time that we have. Quickly, also, I mean, the judicial conversation can go on forever.
Absolutely.
But I think we still want to move the conversation somewhere else, Olive.
Yeah, let's bring in the conversation about the pro-Biafra agitator Simon Ekpa, who's been arrested by the Finnish Central Criminal Police. He's the leader of a faction of the Indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. So I want to get your thoughts exactly, knowing that he was arrested alongside 4 others on suspicion of terrorist activities, as reported by Finnish newsmen. Finnish police say they suspect that Ekpa has contributed to violence and crimes against civilians in southeastern Nigeria. And police also suspect that the Biafra agitator committed the crime of collecting money in violation of the Finnish Money Collection Act. So let's find out your thoughts regarding, this situation. There are those who are calling for his extradition to Nigeria, that, he be tried here in Nigeria. Let's first of all get your general thoughts on, if you see that happening.
I welcome the action of the Finnish government, particularly the Finnish police in Helsinki. No citizen is expected to sit in a foreign land, promote violence, promote conflict in his own land. I think what the government in Helsinki or the police in Helsinki has done is what's expected under international law and under the municipal and national laws of Finland. So I welcome what they have done. But I need to say this, I need to caution. I read a statement by the Defense Ministry yesterday where it stated, among others, that that it is expecting the removal of Simon Ekpa from Finland, and in a few days he will arrive in Nigeria for trial. It is not Uhuru. Nigeria does not have an extradition treaty with Finland, and 2, this is fundamental. As far as I'm aware, there's no crime established against Simon Ekpa in Nigeria, except I have amnesia. I'm not sure charges have been filed against him by law enforcement agencies in Nigeria for acts, criminal acts that he triggered, he instigated, he continues to promote in Nigeria. And 2, the question of extradition in international law is a tough call. It's a tough call. And don't forget that Simon Ekpa is a Finnish, and it's expected that he will have to go through the entire gamut of the court, in Finland. We'll also have the European Convention on Extradition that the Finnish government has to deal with, and the European Human Rights Act. So I'm not a seer or a prophet, and I see the battle for his extradition getting as far as the European Court on Human Rights in Strasbourg. It's not going to be an easy call. It's not going to be an easy call for Nigeria. But we must do the proper thing. If Simon Ekpa has committed any crime, I think criminal charges should be brought against him, in our courts, and I do not think that has been done.
How do you see that? I mean, what are your expectations? Because I mean, first of all, he has, like you said, he has to go through the process in Finland. What are your expectations, and also, how does that also affect the Nnamdi Kanu conversation here in Nigeria, and the ability of the current administration to also manage the violence, that is being caused by these elements in the southeast? There's possibilities that, since Simon Ekpa has been arrested, there might be more violence. A couple of days ago, we heard about what happened in Anambra State on Monday.
You touched an important point there. That the fact that Nigeria doesn't have a extradition treaty with Finland does not extinguish our right to apply that he be extradited to Nigeria. But the Finnish government will only entertain the application on the basis of discretion, and other factors will have to come into play. If he's repatriated or extradited to Nigeria or removed to Nigeria, will his fundamental rights be abrogated by the trial? Would the trial be fair? Would the trial not turn into a political trial? These are factors that the Finnish government has to look at. But if you look at what is at play, and you use Nnamdi Kanu's case as an example, you ask yourself, has his trial be fair? Has the trial not turned into a political football or a hot political potato? You ask yourself, how has the trial, increased, people's perception of the politics around combating terrorism in our country? If you look at case laws that have come out of Finland, particularly in the European Court on Human Rights, Section 2 of the Extradition Act, in Finland, the European Court had consistently respected it. Here, the Section 2 says that the Finnish government cannot extradite a Finnish citizen to a high contracting state. Unfortunately, that is the law. Cases as Koslov, Lazarov Fesso against Finland, a long list of cases. The European courts, court had consistently held and protected the fundamental right of Finnish citizens. That is the challenge that we have to face. But at the diplomatic level, I do not think that we have that. Let me put it lightly, by not insulting my country. I do not think we have that influence, that prestige in the Committee of Nations for us to move the needle in the haystack. Unfortunately, again, too, how we address the fallout, of the arrest, of the prosecution, of the attempt to extradite him to Nigeria, will also tell on our ability to address the fundamental issue of terrorism that afflicts us. You pointed out an example of what happened in Nnewi. That ought not to happen. That ought not to have happened in any sane society. The policing around security in our country is still not up to scratch, and the Nigerian state has to fundamentally confront it, address it, get some of the bad eggs that are creating problems for our country out of society, and get them banged up.
All right.
We are not seeing that. We are living on the wing and on a prayer in our country. When you fly out like I did a few days ago, you are praying. when you are traveling out of jurisdiction to attend courts by road, you are praying against principalities, bad boys, so that they don't hurt you, they don't kidnap you, and demand outlandish, outrageous sum from your family as ransoms. You know,
Yeah. All right.
unfortunately, that's the situation we face in our country.
Yeah, Dr. Mahmood, I mean, I'm certain in the next, couple of days or maybe weeks, we'll learn more, about his arrest and, maybe what even engineered it. If it's possible that the Nigerian government had a role to play, we would find out more in the next couple of weeks. But thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thanks for your time, and we wish you a very, interesting weekend ahead. We'll speak with you again soon.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a long time. Welcome to Lagos from Enugu.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, well, very interesting conversation there, and just like I said, in a couple of days, I guess, or maybe weeks, we'll learn more about the Simon Ekpa case. Now, a proposed constitutional amendment to introduce a single 6-year term for the president and state governors has failed in the House of Representatives. The bill, which is sponsored by Honorable Ikenga Ugochinyere, also sought to institutionalize the rotation of the presidency, governorship, and local government chairmanship amongst Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. Additionally, it proposed holding all elections nationwide on a single day to streamline the electoral process.
This marks another failed attempt to introduce a 6-year single tenure, following a similar proposal in 2019 by a speaker from Benue State. And it's a very failed scenario, it seems, And the single 6-year term, there are those who would argue for it and those who would argue against it. I think the argument for the single 6-year term is the fact that it's believed that after that single 6-year term, they wouldn't be able to come again, and that it gives them enough time to do whatever they need to do, because sometimes 4 years is not enough for them to complete whatever project. And they would argue that there is no continuity in government, as we've seen in Nigeria. Well, unfortunately, it's the fault of the elected, not really the electorates, because the electorates have a part to play, but it's just because these people don't come with a heart to serve, right? Others would argue that with single 6-year term, they will do more stealing, because they'll say, oh, with double terms, if you allow them to do 4-year terms, that they can come twice. They would do work the first time, and the second time they're coming to steal. But if you give them a single 6-year time, there's no opportunity for stealing. But the argument against that would be, if they know that they don't have any other chance at this, they will do all the damage that they need to do in this single 6-year term. So it's just really a number of arguments for and against the single 6-year term.
Well, I mean, I think we can expand on it, going further, maybe later in the week. But for now, we've had a very interesting hour. Let's quickly share with you what our major conversations have been in the first half, and also let you know what's coming up in the second half of Breakfast Central.
And we had this conversation looking at other areas as well. We had the reps reject 6-year tenure bill for presidents and governors, and also the election to be conducted in a single day. NEC meets OK's power and policing reforms. We'll be looking more at electricity and the power struggles within the next hour. Let's share with you what's coming up next.
Reps demand 500 billion naira recapitalization for discos. We'll also share with you the newspaper front pages, major stories making headlines across Nigeria, and also what our top stories of the week are. Welcome once again. Now let's get you through the newspapers and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Friday morning. We, of course, are going to be kicking off on the Punch newspapers this morning. The Punch this morning there, anti-Tinubu comments. ACF suspends chairman as Afenifere and others back president. It says also Tinubu inherited Buhari's economic policies, Ohaneze, Middle Belt, and the others reply ACF. We can also find this morning on the Punch. Ekpa's terror charges. Federal government presses for extradition as IPOB disowns Biafra agitator. Interesting. PDP postpones NEC meeting as North Central insists on chairmanship. 21 states enroll for AFDB 850 billion naira agri scheme. Bottom of your page there, Lagos 3 trillion naira 2025 budget prioritizes infrastructure and tourism. And also, visiting US-based Nigerian, bought 9 drugs before his death. And that's from the police. We can also find here serial grid collapse, NEC panel to boost power generation in states. Those are the major stories I think we can find. Okay, federal government and governors decide on state police next week. Away from the Punch, let's go to our next paper.
All right, our next newspaper this morning is the Daily Independent newspaper. On the front page, Kwara Adamawa KB FCT delayed decision on state police. NEC gives states and FCT 1 week to submit report. Raises committee on national electrification to check grid collapses. RMAFC, agency that sets salary structures for public officials, broke. Ooh. Nigeria loses $28 billion annually to power outages. Tinubu loans bringing unbearable pressure on economy, says Atiku. Atiku Ayu gave Tinubu opportunity to be president, says Bode George. National Assembly replaces death sentence for drug traffickers. 100 million Nigerian children at risk of climate emergency, UNICEF alerts. Reps reject 6 single-year term for presidents and governors. ACF suspends chairman for comments on 2027 presidency. And at the top of the paper, Senate okays Tinubu's 1.767 trillion naira loan request. And the final story here, Finnish police arrest IPOB and Simon Ekpa over terrorism charges. CDS hopeful of his extradition to Nigeria. Let's move over now to our next paper.
All right, the Daily Trust newspapers, IPOB, military seeks extradition as Finland jails Ekpa. We spoke this morning with Dr. Abdul Mahmood, I think, and he mentioned that Nigeria and Finland don't have an extradition treaty amongst both countries, so we'll see how things turn out. Grid collapse, NEC raises committee on national electrification. Reps reject 6-year single term for presidents and governors. ACF suspends chairman Osuma over unauthorized statement. A girl, 13, beats classmate to death in Kogi State. Palestinians welcome ICC's arrest warrant for Netanyahu, and also Kano government reunites 76 free teenagers with families. Those are the big stories on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning.
And let's go now to the next paper, which is this Nigerian newspaper. Reps throw out 6-year single-term bill. Veto legislation seeking to alter 4-year term for presidents, governors. National Assembly proposes life jail for drug offenders and traffickers. 1 out of 4 Nigerians want to migrate, says the NBS. Civil society groups protest fuel importation by NNPCL. Biafra agitator Ekpa others to be extradited from Finland to Nigeria. His arrest has averted another war in Southeast, says Ohaneze. Senate approves Tinubu's request to borrow $2.2 billion. These are the conversations that we're having this morning. We'll be joined by journalist and public affairs analyst this morning, Abib Aruna. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
All right. I think we should start with the last paper. The low-hanging fruit here, talking about the 6-year term, single-term bill thrown out, and National Assembly proposing life jail for drug offenders as opposed to the death penalty. Would you have preferred, or are you in support of the life imprisonment as opposed to the death penalty? Do you think that the death penalty was a better one?
Let me talk about the 6-year single term.
Yes, please.
That was rejected by the National Assembly, particularly the House of Reps. This single term has been the front burner for some time. One of the ways that, according to them, they want to stabilize the democratic process, making the governors and president to have 1 single term of 6 years, But it's difficult for many of the lawmakers to agree with that for now, because they will be affected if the bill was passed yesterday. They'll be affected. So it was predictable and expected that it will be rejected. But personally, to me, I prefer that 6-year single term. Because the 6-year single term, there will be no need for second term that people will be daring to have, But with the 6-year single term, you are sure of your 6 years, and you're supposed to be able to consummate what you promised the electorate. in those 6 years. But unfortunately, I don't think the people that pushed that bill did enough homework, you know. And I don't also think that the president and the governors will be watching while you remove the rug on their feet.
So you don't think that they rejected it because they think it's not an appropriate? No, it's more for selfish reasons from your perspective.
I think at the right time, that kind of bill will be looked into.
Is it right timing, or the fact that you think that they rejected it for selfish purposes because they are interested?
If you look at what this man said yesterday, Atiku Abubakar said, you did not even look at the bill very well before you decided to just throw it out. You know, it has its own merit and demerits. To me, the merits far outweigh the merits.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that might be because we are failing to focus on, you know, what should be the real focus, which is the strengthening of our institutions. If we had, you know, an electoral process that people can trust, nobody would be scared of, you know, the double term, you know, because they know, Nigerians know that, you know, you can be rejected in the elections after 4 years if you're not performing. You know, but because we're failing to focus on what really the major problem is, which is a lack of institutions that should checkmate these, you know, persons in power, we then want to sell the idea, well, not we, they want to sell the idea that, oh, well, it's just 6 years, you know, and then the person will go.
You know, don't forget that our democracy, our politics has its own nature and character. People are always interested in second term in office.
Yeah.
We should not be. Mandela served on 1 term. And even where the democracy we are emulating came from, America, there was no term limit in the US Constitution. It was later that they decided to amend the Constitution to include term limit. The first US president, George Washington, there was no term limit. They allowed him to go on another 2 terms. He said, no, gentlemen, the institutions must be grown, must grow institutions. So I agree with you, but our democracy is still growing. And I hope it will grow. I hope it's growing anyway.
Okay, I think the second part of that was...
Yes, the second part, this drug issue.
Yes.
You see, most of these Asian countries, they don't joke with the issue of drug smuggling drugs. You know, it's there's no jail time, it's death sentence. You look at these Asian countries in Thailand, India, and the rest. But in Nigeria, I think what they are doing is before now, I can't remember if there was any issue of death sentence for that. Yes, during the time of Buhari, some people were killed, you know, for engaging pushing drugs, smuggling drugs. But I think what they're doing is in the best interest of the country. We won't say because someone smuggled drugs, they will now sentence him to death. I think the life sentence is okay, in my view. It's enough deterrent for people not to smuggle drugs.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an argument. National Assembly will be able to have that argument, you know, among themselves. You know, and hopefully it is data driven, not just, you know, by sentiments. The reason some of those countries, you know, are very strict with, you know, drugs in the country you refer to is mostly because they can point out the damage that drugs have done to their society. So maybe Nigeria should also be able to do the same thing. You know, point out how much damage drugs have done to the Nigerian society. Data driven, not just, you know, oh, you know, in this state they, you know, inhale this and it's, you know, it has to be properly data driven, then we can have a proper argument.
Yeah, Singapore has hung their 3rd person this week for drug trafficking offenses. You know, but we have...
Another flip side is that how many people have been sentenced to death in Nigeria?
Wrongfully.
That have been killed.
Yeah.
People find it difficult to sign this sentence, except perhaps Oshomole when he was there. Tell me another person that has been bold enough to sign.
Many would have been on the death row for
many
years.
Many people have been on the death row. Unlike other countries that they do it easily.
I think, like, for those who are against the death penalty and who have been kicking against it, the argument would be that what happens in situations where people are framed, are set up, you know, that there's a possibility that, you know, it's better for 1,000 guilty people to go scot-free than for one innocent person to be found. But anyway, let's move on to other stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Biafra story has to come on next. The story is on this day. Biafra agitator Simon Ekpa and others to be extradited from Finland to Nigeria. His arrest has averted another war in the southeast, says Ohaneze. Your thoughts?
Ekpa will be a fool not to know that one day the message will catch up with him. We don't engage in this kind of activities without looking at the other side of facing repercussion. What he has been doing is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's treasonable in its own definition. So I think, just like in Abdikano, you see when you are doing those things, you need to be very careful. You face the consequence. Look at the state of the Southeast. It's in a mess. Can't go home because of Amamedo State. I go home regularly. I'm going home in December.
Yeah.
I don't hide it. But they cannot go home because of these activities of people like EPA. So I think the federal government is involved. Even though you say there is no treaty between Nigeria and Finland, but there are other channels the federal government can use to make sure that guy is sentenced to this country. Talk about face justice. You face justice. You can't continue like this. People from his own region, Ohanese and other groups are not in favor of what he has been doing.
IPOB has denied him. They have disowned him. And even when a number of the killings were happening in the southeast, when Nnamdi Kanu, I think there was a time that Nnamdi Kanu actually wrote a letter whilst he was still in detention to say that all the sit-at-home orders should come to an end. And EPA said no, they must continue with the sit-at-home orders. So it would seem that he's also distanced in a way himself from Simon Ekpa. IPOB seem to have distanced themselves. Ohanese Ndigbo don't seem to be in support.
That's the question. This kind of activity, there are many ways of doing it. You don't need to even to show your face in fighting against injustice, in your view. But it was directly in the front and telling anybody that gets to listen that I will fight this government. But now the game is up. He should have his day in court.
Right, so you expect that he will be brought to Nigeria?
I'm not. But I think one way or the other, we face justice. Because if you look at the charges against him, before now, people are saying that Finland will not do anything against what he has been doing. But all of a sudden, it was arrested yesterday, him and his sponsors. So it's a possibility that, as I said, that even if there's no any meaningful agreement to Nigeria and Finland, there are other ways that Nigeria can use to make sure that this guy is brought to justice.
So I think, there's several conversations that have come up about him in quote-unquote fraudulently receiving or raising funds to support the cause. But I think another aspect to look at would be what the impact of this would be. Do you think that this would restore peace in the southeastern region of the country? Or is it just because there are those who would say you cut off the head and somebody else springs up, that there's already a movement there? Because when Nnamdi Kanu was detained, Simon Ekpa came up. And the moment they detain Simon Ekpa, maybe somebody else will come up.
I am in favor of peace, searching of peace in the southeast. I don't think some people will stay at home and say, you should not go out on Monday and you won't go out. I don't see that happening in my state in Edo or happening in the southwest. Yeah. It can only happen in yes, I will tell my Igbo friends, what are you guys doing? But somebody is fanning the embers of hatred, fanning the embers of that. We have been unjustly dealt with. Let's fight it. And most of this group that we have mentioned are not in support of what he has been doing. So we're supporting him. So I think EPA is a major character in all this mess that is going on. And his arrest will go a long way in making sure that those guys, that the activities are curbed. Yeah. I don't see anybody coming up to replace him that is so influential as EPA.
Yeah. We'll see how things turn out. The conversations will definitely extend into the weekend and into next week.
But I think we should also just use this opportunity to mention to our audience, those watching, that if you'd like to call and react to any of the stories or share your contributions on any of the stories that we're talking about, the numbers to call are on your TV screen. We want to hear your thoughts as well on these stories, as well as some of the ones that we've highlighted much earlier. But we'll be moving on with the papers, and Osagi, over to you.
I will still stick with the story on this Nigeria, I beg your pardon, top right, which says Senate approves Tinubu's request to borrow $2.2 billion. It obviously has come with its own questions, as always, with regards to Nigeria's debt profile currently, and if we're gonna, continue to run a country that is, mostly run on borrowing. Before you respond to that story, let's take it vis-a-vis the story on the front page of the Daily Independent. It connects to it. At the bottom left corner, you see Tinubu's loans bringing unbearable pressure on economy, says Atiku. But let's get your thoughts.
This is a major question, which on the issue guys are raising. But the reality is that Nigeria is broke. The country is broke. You have to service your debt. You have to pay bills. There are many things that government needs money for. You have to keep on making sure that infrastructure it's being developed. but the money is not there. The money is not there. As a layman, you'll be wondering that why this guy is borrowing. But the fact of the matter is that there's no money. You don't have money. So the government must move on. Must wake up the next day and move on. If you have business and the business is not growing, and the only option you have is to borrow money, to keep opening your shops the next day, you have to borrow money until you find a way out. So I think government is not, or government and its people, they are not doing enough to educate Nigerians, to inform Nigerians this money they are borrowing, what's it used for? That is one. Two is the fact that you said you have removed subsidy from oil, from fuel. You have removed subsidy. We are buying fuel now. 1,100. The first time. I never thought it would happen. But Nigerians are coping, as usual. The people are now asking, this money you are getting from this subsidy removal, what is it meant for? We were thinking that money will be available for government. This will available the subsidy. Now you are telling us that you are still borrowing. And unfortunately, the right questions are not being asked. The National Assembly is now like a department in Nassau Rock. They are not asking questions. Anything the government throws to them, immediately they rush to approve it. By raising questions, Nigerians will be able to know this money that we are trying to borrow. Because the debts are piling up. The debts are piling up. So we're going to pay the debts.
And of course, with the value of the naira continuing to depreciate,
absolutely,
the interest on these debts continue to increase.
And the more you borrow, somebody called me the other day, because I'm a journalist and a businessman now. I got to make money. And he said, okay, if you give me 100 million, how much do I pay? I see your guy, but for now it's 35 million. You pay back. Say, but we discuss. So how do you encourage me as a businessman? I have about 11 people in my payroll. And I will pay 35 million, on top of 100 million. So the system, the terrain is not good enough. Purchasing power is low. If you go to joint, people like us that move around at night, everywhere is dry. So there's no man face in these economic policies. That's what I'm saying. You met a very bad economy. You came in with everything was bad. Everything is so. And the very first thing you did was to remove subsidy without putting the mechanism in place to ameliorate the suffering to cause the people. Now you are turning out policies that are creating more hardship. Where is the human face? Are you going
when you say
before you cure him?
So when the government argues that they had no choice, subsidy just had to go, what would your response be to that? Do they have a strong argument there that they had no choice, there was no time to put these, soft, land in place for Nigeria?
Especially because the other leaders, the principals of the other two leading political parties in the last elections also had plans to remove subsidy.
I don't think any Nigerians will fault the removal of subsidy. Based on the fact that what I just said, that the government is broke. The government is still broke. But I'm not too sure that people managing the economy are doing it well. I must tell you that. But the government is broke. So there's no way they wouldn't have removed the subsidy. But coming out on the very day, on the very first minute of taking office and telling us that you are removing subsidy without looking at the books, without looking at the marginal increase, how it will affect the ordinary people on the street, I don't think that one is good enough. That is no circumspection. There is no pragmatism displayed by the president, by the way he removed the subsidy. Check the books, look at what you can do, look at how it affect the people. Then put in place measures and mechanisms to ameliorate the hardship. You cannot remove it gradually. You cannot remove it gradually. But the pain is causing the public, to me, is becoming unbearable.
There was almost zero tact, with it. I mean, everyone knows the way things work in Nigeria. When you say something like that, almost the same day, petrol stations started to turn up, their prices. And like you said, they didn't have time to even take a look at what our figures were, what the books were saying, before that statement was made. Let me give you a point. In Argentina has the same problem we are facing: high inflation, debt piling up, economic mismanagement. When the new man came in, he said, no, we have to do things in a different way. He started cutting costs. Which we haven't done. We are getting the point I'm making.
We are telling us to cut costs. 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 tighten our belt. We are not doing it. When you go out and you see the convoy of person like Senator Akpabio, look at the governors. Their convoys, it shows you that people are insensitive, that we are not in the same country. They don't think the way we do. So if you tell us, if you are cutting costs, you are introducing reforms, yes, very good, for a better tomorrow. Yeah. But we need to see that you too, you are also tightening your belt. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Maybe you are.
No, I mean, I agree. And I had the, the point made, I think, earlier in the week as well, with regards to Nigeria being broke. But, we've also not made any effort, or from what I see, it doesn't seem like we've made a lot of effort into either saving money or blocking the leakages with which, Nigeria loses money. Because, a lot of analysts would argue that there's so many places with which Nigeria is losing, money every year. People are stealing from the government.
You cannot justify the amount of money they're using to refurbish for the VP. You cannot justify the fact that they bought a new plane in the midst of this crisis. So you're telling us that we should tighten our belt. We are not doing that. It's not justifiable.
Yeah. All right. I think we can throw in a few other stories this morning just before we wrap up. The PDP postpones its NEC meeting as the North Central insists on chair. There's, seems to be more and more crisis in the PDP, if I can call it crisis, in the PDP every week.
Well, you know where it's coming from. There's also crisis in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
You know where it's coming from. It is not politics. And some people have been planted in the PDP. People that are still in PDP, working against the interests of the party. And a party that is not in unity, a party that fails to come together, cannot win an election. Can only win an election when there's a coalition of forces coming together to fight and battle the ruling party. From the way it is, I've not seen any deliberate efforts being made by the leaders of the PDP to resolve the crisis. You have the governors by one side, we have Wiki on the other side. There are some people that are not looking. The committee they set up, another thing, because the leaders are not ready to change their swords. And unfortunately, Nigeria and democracy are the losers. Because Nigeria, we need a very vibrant opposition party to checkmate the excesses of the ruling party. That is the way country grows.
All right.
For now, we have an omnibus and APC doing what it like with the people. But the only article that is coming out to talk once in a while, even article continued ambition is an indicator of the peace we are looking for. Okay. And become elusive in PDP. So they should come together for the sake of this country and democracy.
They should come together, but will they come together?
I'm supposed to be an APC member, but I'm a journalist. Based on who I work for. But the fact remains that Nigeria needs an effective, virile, and vibrant opposition party.
So we are out of time. In 30 seconds, State Police, the NEC says that they have till November 28 to decide. Federal government and the governors will then submit their decision on whether or not to proceed with State Police. Do you think that it's about time we had this conversation, and how do you foresee that this will turn out? It's been
going on for long, and I can tell you.
But now that we have a deadline,
I can tell you based on insight, I saw it. It will not materialize. Not now. Maybe after the first time, after the 2027 elections, cannot materialize based on political reasons.
Okay.
It will not happen.
Let's see how that goes. November 28th is just around the corner. Habib Aruna, thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
My pleasure.
All right. We're going to a very quick break. When we come back, more conversations this morning on Breakfast Central. Stay with us.
Welcome once again. Now, the House of Representatives is demanding 500 billion naira recapitalization of electricity distribution companies, or DISCOs, to enhance their financial stability and improve power delivery to Nigerians. This resolution follows a motion presented by Ayokunle Isiaka, APC Ogun State, during a plenary session. Isiaka criticized the DISCOs for their alleged financial mismanagement and exploitative practices, including demands for additional payments to replace prepaid meters, which consumers had already paid for.
Following the adoption of the motion, Speaker Tajuddin Abbas urged the Federal Ministry of Power to classify discos as non-state actors and take immediate steps to address what he referred to as their reckless actions. He emphasized that only operators within the financial capacity to meet consumer needs should remain in the sector. Joining us is energy expert and managing partner at DPH Investment, Dr. Onoha Nachi. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to Nigerians.
All right. What will this mean, if this actually plays out and discos are quote-unquote classified as non-state actors and the recapitalization is enforced in this case, 500 billion. What would this mean for the discos and for the power sector in Nigeria?
First, I will say that the House of Rep people are not in tune with realities of the sector. So if they were, probably they wouldn't think about that motion wouldn't have been raised. I need us to recall that in last year, the 2023 electricity law clearly stated the diversification of the sector, giving powers to the regional government. States are now entitled to establish their own regulatory body and also license discos in their states. So which of the discos are they talking about? Are they talking about the old licensed discos in 2012, 2013? Are they talking about to be licensed discos by state governments in their various states? Because as of today, I can tell you that about 7 or 8 states has established their electricity law. And out of that 7 states, 4 or 5 has even gotten the mandate from NEC to establish their regulatory framework. And about 3 has established their regulatory framework. A typical state like Enugu has an existing regulatory framework that every discos operated in Enugu abide by and work with. They have a regulator for the state. It is no longer the national regulator. So when they make that statement, it became so laughable that a group of people that are sitting in that chamber could not be in tune with what the market says or what it says, because we must get to that point where the regulators are localized, they are regional based, they are state based. And that way it becomes easier because the circumstances in each state is never the same. The economic indices is never the same. The purchasing power of each state is never the same. So every state has to now begin to operate. What you generate, some of the state has resources to generate power, but because of the original laws that we had in place, they never made use of it. But this law has enabled them to begin to think inward on how they can generate power from the state and regulate from the state. So talking about capitalization, it will not just be an effort in futility, but a waste of taxpayers' money at that point. And another point to look also is, even the so-called national discos, when they were licensed in 2013, what were the framework? The framework did not ask for 500 billion capitalization. I realize they have a regulator, though. The National Assembly is not a regulator for that. If they can only make laws. So if they feel anything is wrong, go back to NEC laws and amend it, wherever you want to amend. But you are not the one to determine capitalization base. They have a regulator. So there were conditions precedent to that time in 2013 when they were licensed to take over the infrastructures. My concern would be those conditions, how are they adhering to it? And I think I can stop here while we talk more about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to X-ray, how they have adhered to these conditions. Yeah, and I also would have liked that you also share, what the major problem these discos, are facing are. Many have also, one of the things that was also mentioned, is the mismanagement of funds, running into billions and billions of naira. And so what for you is the major challenges that discos across the country currently facing? And what would you have, asked to be done different?
When I speak from the expert knowledge part of it. I speak from an institutional knowledge. I was part and parcel, an integral part of the privatization of the power sector. I played a major, significant role from the investor's point. So we can tell the realities then and the realities now. Let me take Nigerians back for us to understand this. When the discourse were privatized, there were one condition that was very clear: your ability to reduce losses. There's what we call ATC and C, the aggregated technical commercial losses. This was the parameter used to measure any asset you're acquiring. Anybody acquiring any asset was asked to show how can you reduce these losses, from the technical losses, from the commercial losses, from the collection losses. This was the parameters used to measure this. And for you to reduce all these losses, it means you're going to make an investment. You're going to make an investment in the technical grant. You're going to make an investment in the collection grant. You're going to make an investment in the commercial grant. The question to date that nobody has ever asked: the people that took over Discos, have they made any investor in this regard? The answer that I can tell any Nigerian that care to listen is capital no. They keep running back to government for intervention fund. If you know you cannot do what you sign off in an agreement, you liquidate the assets. Somebody else take it over. Because I don't see where you sign an agreement and every time you go and lobby people in the presidency, probably negotiate, okay, give us intervention fund, we'll return SY amount to you to gripe you and all. It cannot continue to work. It has been done time with that number. Those intervention funds are money shared by the big boss of this country. It does not give us solution. It does not give us solution. My take about it is, can the government mandate the disco owners to implement the agreement they signed in 2013, where you agreed that you are going to make an investment to reduce the technical losses, you're going to make an investment to reduce collection losses, you're going to make an investment to reduce commercial losses. By the way, reducing collection losses means you're going to meter your system.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. So it is not even responsibility of the consumers to talk about the meters, but policies are being changed to suit one group of people. How can I be putting money for somebody to collect revenue for his business? How? Taxpayers' money? It is never done anywhere in the world.
Okay.
If you must collect money, you must be able to meet up what you want to collect. You don't just arbitrarily do that. But the system has been so adjustment. If this government is ready and they are willing at this point in time, I think the best option is take the discourse, the national discourse, to the original agreement. Let's begin from there. What have you done in your collection losses? What have you done in your commercial losses? What have you done in technical losses? You are supposed to make an investment to stop your technical losses. You come back and say, oh, I receive 500 megawatt of power. In the cost of distribution, I lost 100 or I lost 150, so I cannot pay for it. Who are you telling that? Can somebody help me answer that question? Who? It's like telling somebody that I bought a goose and in the way of transporting it, my car had an accident and two got damaged, so I cannot pay for that too. Who will you tell that? You are supposed to make sure the vehicle that carries out your goods is sound, strong. That's the technical losses you have to prevent. You have to make sure even that vehicle has an insurance. That goods has an insurance. But when you don't do this because you have someone you can run to and blame and cry foul and threaten the nations and all that, no.
All right.
There are more to it to be done.
We'll come to talk about the metering challenges, but let's also still look at the responsibility of the federal government. The Executive Director of the Research and Advocacy Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, Sunday Oduton, had said that the federal government also had a role to play, saying that the government owned 40% of stake when it comes to this discourse. So that if the government is saying that, you have to be able to raise 500 billion, then you should be able to pay the 40%. And when you pay your 40%, we'll pay 60%. Is that a fair argument?
That was the original model and is a fair argument. But can we talk about that fair argument from urban issues? If you say we're injecting, let's say I want to prevent my technical losses with 100 billion. I own 40%, so I bring 40 billion and you bring 60 billion. Have the private sector put their 60 billion on the table? That's a question. Because government owned the asset. Now, can I ask a very clear question? Let any of the DISCO point clearly say that they have transmitted ₦1 profit margin to the federal government. None have ever done that. None, not even one, not even one. So if you're asking me at this point to come back and contribute, hello, the ones I have done, where's our profit? Can we retrospectively calculate it and begin to say, this is the revenue generated, this is the profit margin? If I'm federal government, I will even be talking about this. I will ask the federal government call me for me to go to the discourse and let them give us their book. The profit they have made, they have been sharing among themselves. What has it remitted to federal government? The taxpayers that own 40%. How many years gone? We are talking about 10 years plus gone. Can you make an investment in a business that you own 40%? Me and you, as we are seated, a business you own 40% and you keep injecting money, you have no return on investment for you in 10 years. Is that a viable business? Is that the people that is operating it are fraudulent? That's what you need to be declaring. So it's very obvious. The argument he made is a viable argument. It is contained in the agreement. I participated in putting that agreement together because I was one of the investors in the acquisition process. So I can tell you, even when I'm part of the investors, but I must hold Nigerians first. Nigeria is my country, and Nigerians must be told the truth and benefit from the realities of the truth. So it is something that we need to resolve and get a lasting solution to it.
Yeah, let's also look outside the discos for Nigerians who, of course, have given up, on the whole energy sector. There's the transmission, there's the, generation. Have the discos, and the ability to perform also been affected by the inadequacies of these other sectors?
I will capitally say no to that, and I will justify my no to it clearly. There are discos today that are rejecting power. If the transmission say they are sending them 300 megawatts up, and they say, no, we can't take it to. No, the distribution network cannot carry it. No, our capacity to collect the value of that, we don't have it. Who is to be blamed on that? That's what I'm telling you my no, and clearly. Now, if we go down to the transmission networks, that is a separate problem. We have a national problem on that, a clear national problem that has to be. And until we make up our mind how to resolve that, and some of us has given a position paper on how to resolve our national network, you cannot keep a national grid in a population of over 200 million. It will not work. We have gotten to that level. Whoever that did that is a selfish assignment. As far back as 2003, there was a proposal that was negotiated with Siemens on how to break our national grid into regional grids so that it can easily be managed. And that was done in 2003. And by 2013, when we were doing the power sector reform, it was brought back to life and agreed that a super grid should be built on top of it. Then you break it to regional grid and have a super grid. So there were propositions to it and there were milestones defined on how to achieve it. You cannot continually to have this collapse and we still have a national grid. We need to understand how this national grid works. It's a monumental failure. So it's either we'll come out of it or we'll continue to lie to ourselves and siphon money from it. That's all we can choose to do. Because let me describe to Nigerians for us to understand how the national grid. Every power generated in Nigeria is collectively sent to a NOC, Network Control Center in Osogbo. It means these powers will pull off their signals to that spot first. If you're generating 5,000 megawatts, Osogbo must first receive it from that NOC and then begin to distribute it. Please, can we calculate the cost of taking it to Osogbo and the cost of returning it back to where it should be? That foolishness was when we were small in population, maybe 50 million, 60 million or thereabouts, or maximum 100 million, but not today, and not for a nation that wants to industrialize, that wants to develop. So in the course of returning it back from Oshogbo to the various networks, to the various discos, there will be losses and there will be failures that will occur. It's a natural phenomenon. So in my own opinion, if we want to really address the transmission, we can start first by breaking it into two regions. Let's have northern transmission and southern transmission.
Yeah.
And that network will be built so that when it fails, we know it's a region that failed. And you can superimpas with the super transmission network to service the other one. And it will not be a national collapse. And once you do those two regions, you now begin further to move it into region and into 6 of the geopolitical regions. And you have northeast transmission line and the north central, northwest, southeast. These transmission lines will be independent. And because we have changed the structure of the power sector by allowing the subnational to generate and distribute, automatically this local generation will feed into their subnational transmission line. And if there's a failure, it is that region or it is that state. It can be understood and managed.
All right.
Not what we have. We should go back to the drawing board and address the reality and so that we can come out of it.
Yeah, well, let's hope the current power minister understands the need to go back to the drawing board, at least, puts everyone on their feet. Onoha Nachi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we, of course, would love to have you back again as things develop in Nigeria's power sector.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Nigerians, for listening. Have a lovely day.
You too.
I think we can all come to the conclusion when it comes to Nigeria's power challenges that all power belongs to God.
Oh, wow. Yes, I'm buying an inverter in the interim. If you're not a child of God, get yourself an inverter. We need to go, but before we wrap up on Fridays, we, usually would share our top stories of the week. And for me, it is definitely the Simon Ekpa story that, of course, started yesterday. I remember in I'm not sure what year it was. I don't want to get the year wrong, but 2015 or 2016, 2017, one of those periods, just before the group was proscribed by the federal government. I remember that I was in Enugu then, and I had met with Nnamdi Kanu the day before at Evangelist Elliot Uko's residence. So Nnamdi Kanu was in Enugu. We were called, journalists and the likes. We had brief conversations with him and all of that. The next day, they were meant to have a meeting with the Enugu state government, or with the Southeast governors, I beg your pardon. And then that morning, while I was at work, I got a call from someone who said that Nnamdi Kanu was not going to be at that meeting, that he was on his way, out, or the person was at the airport, but the point that the call was to establish was that while the Southeast governors and the Enugu state government were gathering, waiting for Nnamdi Kanu, to show up, along with Professor Ben Wambweze back then, that he would not, be showing up to the meeting. Later that evening, or the next day, then, of course, the federal government prescribes, the IPOB. And since then, it's been completely chaotic. Chaotic in every way, shape, and form that you can imagine. The, attack of the alleged attack by the Nigerian army on Nnamdi Kanu's residence, him fleeing Nigeria, being arrested, in Kenya, brought back to Nigeria, this long, never-ending court case, and then the emergence of Simon Ekpa in Finland, deciding to continue, the agitation over there in his own way, leading, to the violence, or allegedly, leading to the violence that has occurred in the Southeast since then. The emergence of the ESN, the emergence of these violent groups that want to enforce their sit-at-home orders, the random sit-at-home orders anytime they feel like it. If they've had a bad day at work, they can declare sit-at-home order the next week, to commemorate, Nnamdi Kanu's court case or something, whatever it is. Mondays in the Southeast have been, very, very slow in the last couple of years because of the actions of these people. Every now and then you see that Nigerian police officers are attacked and killed, and Simon Ekpa will be on his social media page celebrating it, and saying all sorts of very, very disgusting.
To think that he didn't start out like this. He started out working as a broadcaster on the, I think it was on the radio Biafra, and after a while decided to. Yeah,
but I mean, I'm just trying to break down the long history of, until we get to where we are. And just like the guest that we had earlier, had said that he should have known that his day of reckoning will come. So I'm fingers crossed, you know, to see how this turns out. If the Nigerian government has been involved with his arrest so far or not. And exactly what, you know, how the charges will be ironed out, you know, with regards to charging him with, you know, aiding or supporting terrorism in Nigeria from Finland.
Right. And for me, I think my top story of the week will be the story we had today about the independence of the judiciary, especially because for me, with my background as a lawyer, I remember how when in university and in law school, we were taught about the sanctity of the profession of law. Like the legal profession was viewed as this very, I don't want to use the word holy, but I'll use that very loosely. But it was this noble profession that we looked up to. There were certain things that were not permissible in the legal profession. For example, you don't advertise because it's not supposed to be a loud profession. There are certain things that are not allowed. You know, but it really hurts me. Whilst I'm not practicing today, it hurts and breaks my heart to see the representation that the legal profession is now having, that the judiciary, the image, judiciary is respected. It's why we call them my lord, your honor, your worship. You know, we revere them so much. And it feels like these seeming or typically hollow chambers have now been desecrated by politics. And it really just hurts me to see these stories pop up every now and then about how the judiciary is no longer independent, how the judiciary is frolicking with the executive. And it would really mean a lot that there's a cleaning that goes on from the inside out. And that every year we're not just having MBA conferences that seem like it's paying lip service and it's networking functions, but that it's a conference that people can see that there's a marked difference between what the legal profession was like the year before and the year after. I mean, that would definitely be my story. I have such a strong passion for the legal profession. Whilst I'm not practicing it, I do hope that this reputation that, you know, especially in the past year or two, that the profession has garnered, that there can be some cleanup that's really done there. But that's all that we will be taking for today. We've come to the end of this week's show. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's broadcast. We'll be back again same time. Remember that Breakfast Extra continues over the course of the weekend. Join us tomorrow, not us, well. Judith and Mazino will be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. You can join them to continue conversations. We'll be back again on Monday. Remember, do not drink and drive. We know it's Friday, but make sure to turn up with sense. I am Olive Emodi, and I'll see you on Monday.
And I am Osaogi Ogbon. See you on Monday.